Imagine That Honeybee Chat. And we have beekeepers from all different kinds of locations. We even have people from Ohio, not just New Hampshire, Vermont, and Massachusetts, but we have people from Ohio, Evelyn. So we are happy to have all of you guys here today. What we're going to talk about is 2020, the COVID year to be forgotten, as well as December and what we need to do now. If you guys have been doing medications or what you guys have been up to. I found a little mouse in my hives the other day when I was cleaning things out. It got stuck in my upper entrance hole. Poor little mouse. Do we have a poor little mouse like, no, you guys aren't feeling sorry for that little mouse? No, me neither. But it was kind of sad to see that it probably started at like this big and it got this big and it couldn't get out the hole again. So it had plenty of everything that it needed until it got too big. So that's what happens when you get too big for your britches, right? Okay, so we have, let's see, we have Pat, Jan, Brian, Joanna, Chris, Dale, Nancy, Peter, Greg, Beth, Laura, Tobias, Lynn. All right, good to see you. But not seeing you, but that's okay. And Evelyn and Francie. All right, great. So where do you guys want to get started?
I could tell about my experience.
Okay,
if you'd
Pat,
like.
go right ahead.
Karen. It's actually
I'm sorry, Karen. Yes, Karen
okay.
and Pat.
So September 23rd, I've been doing a live one on the University of Pennsylvania and did a course with them as well. And I decided to treat for the mites for the fall. So I had
And what did you treat with?
The strips.
What kind of strips? Mite Away?
Mite Away strips.
Okay.
I did 2 strips for 2 weeks, starting September 25th, I guess it was. And because I watched the weather, and of course you have to make sure the temperature is okay. Leave it on for 2 weeks. You have to take the entrance reducer off to allow for good ventilation and remove all the food, which I did. So then I went and took the mite strips off. 2 weeks later, I decided to feed them, leave the entrance reducer off so there would still be good ventilation. Feed them because it was still warm enough. And then I went in about 2 to 3 weeks later and put another jar of food on for them.
In September?
This was in the middle of October now, towards the end of October.
Put liquid food on?
Liquid food on them, yeah. Because it was still warm enough. Mm-hmm. And then we got a cold day. I went in the beginning of November and they were all dead.
Okay. Somebody just asked if they can record this, and I just want to let people know, yes, you can record this. Yes. So what do you think happened? Do you think you had a queen? Do you think that the population?
I had a queen and they were doing very, very well.
And was she still laying, Pat?
No, not that I know of. I didn't go all the way down in because I didn't want to disturb them too much when I was putting the strips on. But I did see her right before I put the strips on.
Before, but did you see her after? Yeah. Did you see her after the strips?
I did not go in to look at everything when I took the strips off.
Okay.
I did not.
And did you have a reduced population? Do you have a lot of dead bees on the bottom after you medicated?
I did have some, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So what do you guys think?
Got it.
Queen mortality.
Oh, your battery's dying.
Whoops. What do you guys think happened with Karen's hive?
I think the MAQ took the queen.
That's what I think too. But
Really?
well, I mean, there's no way of knowing unless you didn't see her. But
Right.
but and also, you know, like that's not like the end all. I mean, you'd have bees for a while, but then the bees would eventually die. I mean, you've got winter
died.
bees.
And they were like clustered on one of the couple of the frames. They were like clustered.
Yep.
In small clusters.
Right. So what may have happened?
Right in place, frozen right in place. It seemed. You know, I called for a state inspection. Of course, they haven't come or haven't called. I imagine they won't come for one hive, but anyway, I just asked to see if they would because I had registered the hive for Massachusetts and just to see because I really felt like everything was going so well until I decided to treat with medications.
Right. So we had this conversation at our last Zoom, I believe, on medicating with formic acid. And I'm not saying that we know everything about formic acid, but 2 strips is a lot for a hive in our point of view when we were talking about it last time, because it's like a mega dose. And if you watch your bees, this is just my experience, but if you watch your bees, when you put formic acid on, they like go to the edges. They don't really like it at all. And the other thing that can happen is you can kill your queen because of the ventilation that, you know, the fumes that are going up. The other thing is medicating that late in the season. I mean, you can do it, but the hive doesn't have a chance to build up again if it's really knocked down. So it sounds to me, this is just me, but I'd have to look at, you know, what your cluster looks like, but it sounds like your cluster was pretty small. And if it was really small, it may not have been able to keep itself warm enough, may not.
Yeah.
And it all depends on food too. I mean, I don't know if they had food that was available
They
to them.
did. I had left the honey super on for them. I didn't take anything off of them this year.
Yeah, but did they move?
Hive, so.
Yeah, but did they move up into the honey super where the food was? So it's hard to know without looking at everything.
Right.
You know, the bees.
I started to take stuff out of it, and then the bees out of it, and I said, I'm just leaving it. So maybe I could investigate it.
Right. If somebody else could take a look at it, that wouldn't be a bad idea.
Right.
Maybe ask Lori or somebody else in your area that is a beekeeper to just come over and take a look. It's sad when you don't have a lot of bees, you know, left in that kind of situation, because it is hard for those bees to stay warm.
Yeah.
So anybody else have any ideas on what happened with Karen, or any experiences that you've had as well?
So was this hive a nuke or a package from, or was it a existing hive that you overwintered the previous year?
No, it started in April this year.
And it was a package
from Jody.
I think it was a package. But Karen, you said it was going well throughout the summer.
It was going very well. Yeah.
Did you take off honey?
I did not take anything off of it.
Yeah, it was a tough year anyway. Yeah.
How were your mites?
I had 3 the last test.
3 on a 300B.
Yeah, on the alcohol wash.
And when did you do that one, Karen?
1%.
I did that in, I think it was in August.
Yeah, but you know,
but I had lost a hive last year, and we thought it was to mites. So I said, I'm going to do what University of Pennsylvania said, just do a fall treatment and try to get them in good shape before winter. We've had a very warm fall most of the time.
Yeah, there's a couple of things that I'm hearing here too is, you know, we really need to medicate earlier, even if we didn't have, you know, many mites. In August, we might not see anything, but then in September, we could see a ton. So we all really need to make sure that we do our tests more often, especially as the fall gets closer. And my preference is, I know that some people will say just feed sugar water all, you know, until you can't, but what happens with sugar water, yes, if they eat it, that's fine. But if they're taking it in and storing it, they're not going to have time to cap it over, to use it as food in the future, because it's nice that they have food, but are they going to be able to use it and store it? So a lot of times I will stop feeding like in the beginning of October, or the end of September. That's just what I do, but I'm not saying everybody else has to do that.
And we got super lucky this year, Jody, and it was a super warm October and super warm November. So normally you can't feed that late because it gets cold.
Right.
But this year was crazy late from a warmth standpoint that you could have fed later than normal.
As long as they can cap it over.
Exactly. I mean,
do they have time?
What you're getting.
Yeah. Yeah. So
not only do they have time, but do they have the resources to produce the wax to cap it over?
Exactly. Yeah.
You know, because you can feed them 2 to 1 to make, so they can make that honey store, but they really need the 1 to 1 to generate the wax production.
Right. Right.
So it's a really fine balance.
Yeah. It's, you know, I say this to beekeepers all the time, you know, plan on like 5 years to just get started, because even if you lose your bees every year, I know it's hard and it's expensive, but look at what you learn every year. You know, like this beekeeping is not something that it's just A plus B equals C. There are so many factors when you keep bees. So if you want bees just for the honey, you might want to just go to the store and buy honey, because this is a challenge. You know, I know Brian, for example. Brian, you have been a beekeeper for 7 years, maybe?
I don't know if it's that long. It's
5?
probably approaching 5. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And look at how every year is different for you as well.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like how, don't you feel like you've learned quite a bit? I mean, like you may not feel like an expert, but you've learned a lot.
Yeah, I have. I mean, it doesn't mean that I'm successful at it. It's like I seem to keep losing them every year, usually either during the winter or just in the spring, like this past year. It's like I had 3, and one gave up the ghost at the beginning of the winter, one at the end of winter, and then this spring, so long in coming that I ended up losing the third one. Something I learned in your emails, which I hadn't known in the past, was the sugar boards, which I've now created and put on the hives. I put them on a week ago. I want to go out once we get some warm weather and take a look inside there and see how they're doing with them. That's something I didn't do in the past. Something I also found out about my particular yard. I live on the edge of town, very wooded around where I am. And where I have my bees in the backyard, they're up against the woods. They do fine. But what I found one winter is that the backyard didn't seem to get a lot of blown snow, and it would not be a lot of snow in the trees. The side yard, I could see the trees were covered with snow, and the wind seemed to go down there, and it formed like a wind tunnel, which went right towards the hives. So what I ended up doing the last couple of years is I get stove pellets for my pellet stove, and I took a couple of leftover pallets and I hinged them like this, put them on the ground and wrap the tarp around it to make a windbreak. And also on that side of the yard now, I just put up a chicken coop this year, which will help block the wind too. So that keeps the wind from hitting those hives and keeps them a bit warmer. And in order to keep them warmer, I got the bee cozies from Man Lake. But what I did for additional warmth is, I don't know, those of you who used to go camping in the past have heard of space blankets. NASA used to use those. And I ended up wrapping those around the hive first and then slipped the bee cozy on top of it, just trying to keep that extra warmth inside there. So hopefully this year they make it through.
Yeah. It's a balance because you don't want them to be too warm, but you want them to be dry. You want the wind to be blocked. And so I think the wind block is a really good idea. I ran into that at my house too. When we first moved to our house 10 or 12 years ago, I put the bees in the backyard and I was like, oh, this is great because I can watch my bees. And then they all died. And the wind, I don't notice it really that much, but there was a lot of wind. So now our bees are behind a shed where the wind blocks on the north side so that we don't have that kind of a problem. And sometimes, like if you do have them with lots of trees around, that is really breaking a lot of the wind. So those can be, some of the things that you can do. Brian, you started with some hives fresh again this year. You had established frames. Where are you at right now?
This is what's odd, and this has happened more than once to me. Hive A seems to be stronger throughout the spring and summer, and then it ends up being weaker than the other hive. I don't know why. The queen's there. It's like they're doing what they need to do. It just seems that they don't feed as much, and I can't count every individual bee, but it just seems that the other one is more active. So A starts out higher in the beginning of the year, and then towards the end of the year, B is the one that ends up being strong. And that's where they are right now. They both appear very strong, but the second hive seems to actually be stronger at this point.
So were these wintered over bees that made it through and you went on, or
No.
these were started in the
These are
spring?
started in the spring.
So this was for this year or for past years as well?
It's happened in the past where one seems to precede the other one. And
But
then
the same hives?
No.
The same hive does it every year?
The same bodies, you mean?
The same hive bodies?
Yes.
The same A location does that every year for you, and then the same B location does, or you're just saying that one usually is bigger than the other?
I haven't really kept track of which hive body, but it's like, yeah, I'll have two, and it seems like one goes ahead of the other one.
Right. Well, this is another reason that it's good to have more than one hive so that you can kind of judge what's going on. But the reason that I'm asking about location and the hives is I'm wondering, is there something going on in the frames, or is it the location that you have them, or is it just that one hive is usually bigger than the other? Because that does happen. You have queens that will be more prolific than others. Jan, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions for him.
Yeah.
Brian, what was your mite count like in August?
It's very low in both
On
of the
both of
hives.
them?
In both of them, yeah. I
Okay.
checked them, and I did the treatment 2 times during the summer, and I have it up here. It was a Hop Guard by Man Lake that I used. And the reason why I use the Hop Guard is because you can actually use it while you're feeding them. And also, if you happen to have a honey super on, it's not going to bother with it.
Right, right. Well, the reason that I asked is because the more bees you have, the more mites you're going to have. So
Mhm.
you have that larger hive, you have a higher percentage of having more mites.
Mhm.
They may still be in utero. They may still be under cappings and hadn't come out when you did that mite count in August. Did you do it again a month later? A mite count?
I did my count twice to check, and both times that I did, it's like there were very, very few.
What was the last time that you did your mite count, Brian?
August.
Mhm,
And what method did you use for your mite count?
Sugar roll.
mhm. So let me just say this a little bit for you guys who don't know Jan. Jan is from up north, and she's from
Above the
White Mountain Apiaries, is it,
Yeah.
Jan? Okay.
Yeah.
So Jan is also a teacher of beekeeping. She's also taking, should I tell them what you're doing, Jan,
What?
in New York? She's taking the Master Beekeepers class.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
I completed all the classes. I just
Right.
have to
So she's a
do my
really,
presentation.
yeah. So for those people that don't know her, she is a really good asset. To listen to what she has for ideas. Mites can be a big problem, and again, like with Karen, she might have done the tests, and you might have done the tests in August, but August, it seems, is a time where things don't seem like it's that bad, and that's when you're supposed to be medicating, and then everything hits you right in the face in September and October. So that's why it's really, really hard on us, because we think that everything's good, and then all of a sudden, wow, what
Yeah.
happened?
Yeah, what happens in September and August is that the queen is laying her winter brood. And if your summer bees are still there, they're still in the hive, they are taking care of that capped winter brood. They're taking care of it. And if they start getting weakened from the mites, that winter brood is not going to be fed very well. It's not going to be taken care of. So it's going to be weakened right out of the cell. As soon as they're born, they're already, part of their fat bodies are already gone.
Right. Okay. Yes.
The question I have, it's kind of sounds like, if I follow you, that I stopped checking too early, and that the mites could have came out after I checked and treated. But if I understand what happened with Pat, is that she did treat late, and that was a cause of her losing the hive. I mean, what's the cosmic truth here? How late do you check? How late do you treat in order to be able to get them through the winter?
Go ahead, Jan.
Well, when I treat in the fall, early fall, I never use 2 strips.
Mm-hmm.
I always use 1 strip, only because we're dealing with our weather fluctuations, and I don't want to take the chance of having, like what Pat had, losing that queen. I would rather treat with 1 strip and kind of keep them, even if they're at the threshold or just above the threshold, keep that count down a little. Then when it gets cold enough and I know that they're all in cluster, hit them with an OAV treatment.
Right. And we'll go over the OAV treatment a little bit more too. So this is what I did this year and I'm very cautious, and Peter, I'll get to you in just a sec. But I did Apivar this year in August and September, early September. And then we went out and did the oxalic acid a week or so ago when it was Thanksgiving time. And that was so that we hit the mites early, and then we hit the mites with 1 more try for the last chance in the fall. Right now, I may, depending on the weather, I may go back in during Christmas vacation, because I just don't have a lot of time during the week, and my weekends are pretty full as well, but I just don't have time. So what I may do is around Christmas, I may go in if it's warm enough and do another oxalic acid treatment. So there's different things that you can use at different times. It's just a matter of, again, timing. You need to know how your medications work and how they will best affect your hives so that you can get the best results. I'm not saying it's 100%. Go ahead, Jan.
I've got that picture up.
Okay,
now.
so Jan, let me see if I can change you to host. Okay, I'm going to make you the host.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, now I can go to share screen. Share. Voila.
All right. Yes.
Do you know what you're looking at? You're looking.
Looks like a grinder.
I know, but that reddish brown is a varroa mite.
Yes.
And that varroa mite is underneath one of the little pallets we have under the bee's belly on the bottom side. And you see the bee and you see all the fat body that's in the bee. Look what's inside the varroa. It's that fat body. And the best way that I can equate what happens, I mean, that's how the varroa feeds, is on the bee's fat body.
Right. And people used to think that it was on the blood, but it's really on the fat.
It's really on the fat. So what happens when the varroa sticks his tongue right in there and chews on that fat body? It's like when you or I eat yogurt and put it back in the fridge. You know, you've had the same spoon and you put it back in the fridge, and our enzymes from our saliva get into that yogurt or baby food or whatever, you know, you've put back in the fridge, and you go into it the next day and it's like all watery. The enzymes are breaking it down. That's exactly what the varroa does to our bees. So even though they're gorging and getting full on the fat body, they're leaving that saliva type enzyme on our bees, and it's still continuing to destroy that fat body. So you may get that mite count down and get it knocked down in September, October, but depending on how much saliva that they've left in the bees, it depends on how long your bees are going to live through the winter. So it's really, really important to have those healthy bees throughout the entire year. Not just the fall.
Yeah.
So I wanted to share that because this is a great visual description of what happens to our bees.
Yeah, totally.
And I have to thank Dr. Sam Ramsey for being able to capture this and share it with us.
And what people don't realize too is sometimes they say that they can't see their they can't see the varroa on their bees. Well, the varroa are underneath a lot of the scales sometimes. So it's kind of hard for people to just think that they're going to see all of the varroa, and the varroa are very tiny too, you know, so it's really hard. Brian, I'm not trying to stress you out today. I'm really happy that you're a beekeeper, but what I'm saying is, you know, like, we all have so much to learn. All of us have so much to learn, and we're not going to learn overnight what the true answer is to every question. We can only learn by sharing.
Right. Okay. So two questions then. Jan, you were saying one strip. Now, the one that I use recommends 2 strips, and I have 2 10-frame bodies. That to you is overkill later in the year?
What they're saying is when you're doing 2, that's an intense treatment.
Okay.
If you do 1 for a longer period of time, it might be better for the hive. This is just from what I've seen. I mean, this is what they tell you. They tell you you can use 2 strips or you can use 1 strip.
Right.
But from my experience, what I've seen is when I do 2 strips, those bees are not happy, and I've seen queens die. So
when you treated, did they beard all over the front of the hive?
No.
A lot of times they'll go as far away as they can. And
no, these girls they'll climb right all over the strips, and when I go to check them again, his strip is completely clean. It's like I've never had a problem with them.
And this is HopGuard, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I haven't, honestly though, I haven't used HopGuard. So maybe I shouldn't be talking about that, because what I've used is the formic acid, and that's when they've gone off. So maybe the HopGuard isn't quite as intense, but I don't have experience with that. Jan, have you used HopGuard?
I did when I first started beekeeping because I felt it was more natural.
I did too. Yeah.
And I did not find it very effective.
Yeah. Chris, are you there still? I think she's gone. Chris used HopGuard, and I just wondered what her experience was. So anyway, I think we just all have to share information as to what our experience has been, and follow the directions, and check often and early on the varroa mites.
Yeah.
Did you have another question, Brian?
Yeah, I got on sale one of the oxalic acid cookers, if you want to call it
The
that.
vaporizer,
They
yeah.
vaporize. They didn't have the material to use it, so I figured, okay, I'm going to try that next year. But you were talking about it. You were actually going to use it into the winter.
You can, because it's a vapor that goes into the hive. So you take the wand, which I actually have
Right.
one right here.
Yeah, and just slip it into the entrance.
Yeah. So you take the wand and you put the wood bleach. You take the wood bleach and
Yeah.
you put it into the little crevice. It's about a teaspoon or so, depending on how big your hive is. And then you slide it in, leave it in for the amount of time that you need to leave it in. It vaporizes and goes throughout the hive, and that should kill the varroa mites.
Okay.
Okay.
So provided they're fat enough
Oh,
that I
yes.
didn't have a problem. Yeah.
Yeah.
It should
And-
take care of them.
Yep. And one of the things, yes,
Yeah.
Dale, yes, you're right.
Dale, very, yes.
You always want to wear a
Yes.
ventilator too.
Yeah.
And the pink isn't just because it's girls. Pink is because that's the kind of filter that you want to use. They come with other filters, but you may have to buy this pink one. And this has a much smaller mesh, not mesh, but
Okay.
a filter in it,
Yeah.
so that you're going to be safe. Because
You're
I'm
gonna wear
surprised.
glasses and gloves too.
Oh yes,
Yes.
and gloves
Yeah.
too.
Goggles.
You just have to be careful. It's not, honestly, I've never seen it like splash up at me, but you have to be careful with all of this. I mean, if it sparked and it went into your eye, that wouldn't be good.
Yeah.
So you just need to follow the directions on this, and to go with somebody that has done it before is a great idea as well. Nancy went with me the other day when we did the hives, and I just, for one thing, I love having somebody else to go into my bees with, but it was so quick because we had 2 wands. We were able to do my yards, very fast. And it's just a matter of making sure that you do everything that you're supposed to do when you're supposed to do it. The temperature should be 37 degrees or above. So if we have a warm winter, we can do it. If we don't, it's going to take a lot longer for that, the wood bleach to vape into the hive. So you want to make sure that you do it at the right time as well. So I wouldn't put it off just because you don't have the stuff. Like, I went to one of the larger stores and they did not have it. You could only order the wood bleach online. You can buy it out of the beekeeping catalogs. But then I went to a smaller local store and they had everything I needed. So you can find it if you're looking for it. So don't put it off. If you need to do it, you should do it when you can. Jan, you're smiling. So do you have something else to say? And then Peter.
I would suggest, if you're doing it for the first time, to get a vaporizer buddy that's done it before.
Yeah, it'll build your confidence. It's
It'll
not hard.
build your confidence, and you'll see how easy it is, but you'll learn about the timing and how to close it up, to make sure that your hive has the proper ventilation for it to off gas at the proper rate. So I think it's really important that everybody learns how to do it at least once.
Yeah.
We should have a class in that.
Well, Jan, just because you mentioned that, Nancy and I, when we were doing our hives, and then Chris as well, I have information that I could put into a video.
Okay.
So we did it. Yeah,
I know that New Hampshire Beekeepers is producing a video for it. We're going to have one.
That's great.
Because they asked Joe to do all the safety stuff on it.
Right.
My husband is a hazmat person.
Right.
So,
yeah. So it's really important for people to know how to do it and do it right, because you don't want to have something happen to you, because these vapors, it's not like you're going to see smoke everywhere. These are things that can get into your lungs, and you just don't want to have that happen.
And it's
when it
long
does.
term. It'll do, irreparable damage to your lungs. So you just don't want to fool around with it.
Yeah. Okay. Peter, you had something to say?
Yeah, just a couple things. I mean, the key thing with oxalic acid is the fact that it sublimates. It goes from a solid to a vapor.
Right.
And then as soon as it cools down, it crystallizes.
It crystallizes, yes.
So the problem is when if you inhale it into your lungs, it crystallizes in your lungs, and that's just not good. So that's why the respirator is critically important. It's just, it's very low risk. You're going to get it, but wear the respirator.
Exactly.
The other thing about sourcing the oxalic acid, it's oxalic acid dihydrate. You see lots of posts about like you're supposed to buy from the beekeeping, you know, because it's a special stuff you buy from the, you know, Mann Lake or whatever. But it's like Jody said, it's wood bleach, and you can get it on Amazon. Oxalic acid dihydrate. You can get it from your local stores. It's not hard to find. And then the other thing is, I'm going to kind of go side topic on you. You mentioned how each of your hives were acting differently, or think that one was bigger than the other. I'm curious what is driving your assessment of that, because I have one of my bigger hives. This is two falls or winters in a row, is significantly less active than all the rest of my hives. But yet it's my strongest hive. Jody, it's a queen. I got it from you.
Mhm.
They're kind of like, okay, it's cold out. I'm chilling out. I am clustering, and I'm not flying. I'm conserving my energy. They came out I literally thought I lost it last winter. And I literally had to go out with a stethoscope and like, no, they're still humming, because all my other hives, it was 50 degrees out and they were flying like crazy. This hive, like no activity. And they came out of the spring booming. And then
That's why.
Exactly. And then this past,
Exactly why.
this past November, similar, all my like 50 degrees out, they're all flying. This tall hive just quiet, maybe a bee or two flying. So be careful about how you assess your hives, because different queens, different genetics have different philosophies on how they act.
When I say that they're both 2 bodies, 10 frames, it's just that when I would open them up during the year, I would see a lot of bees on the top of one, and the sugar water was like gone or almost gone. And I'd open up the other one, and I didn't see them on the top. There was more sugar water left over. Once I opened it, I started to see them come up, but they just didn't seem to be as active as
fair.
the other one.
Yeah. So there's a lot of things, a lot of factors with our bees. You know, you've got genetics, you've got the weather, you've got timing, you've got where you have your bees. There's just so much to beekeeping. Greg, we haven't heard a lot from you this year. What I wanted to tell you is Greg he started 4 years ago?
I think so. Peter,
okay.
When did we start?
Yep. Greg and Peter started at the same time?
This is our 4th summer.
Yep. Okay. And Greg is a go-getter. And the first year, he didn't start with just 1 hive. He didn't start with just 2 hives. He started with how many hives, Greg?
5 or 6.
5 or 6. Okay.
Oh, Greg.
And then in your second year, Greg, how many hives did you have?
36.
Okay, so you went from 6 to 36. So Peter, that's why I'm telling you should talk with Greg about if you want to expand your yard. And then third year, how many hives did you have approximately?
20.
Okay. And then
A
this
little
past,
bit less. Teams.
okay. And then this year, past 2020, how many hives did you have over the summer?
I'm down to 12.
Okay. So what would be your suggestion for somebody getting started that just wants to have backyard bees and maybe wants to have 1 or 2 hives?
Know your limits.
Yeah. And so this is what I talk about sometimes with my friend Dale, is it's like growing a garden and tomatoes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Put those plants in, and you can plant tomato plants. You can plant how many plants you want, but then you got to make tomato sauce. You got to do something with them. And so now you have learned that going from 6 to 36 to 20 to 12, there's got to be something that's manageable there. So tell us more, Greg.
12. That would be the 12 number for me.
Mm-hmm.
The 6 was fun. You know, it's exuberance. You're getting into it. You're there all the time. You're putting other things in life on hold while you're sitting there doing your bees. And that was all well and good. And then I decided that I wanted to try something completely different for the next year and really ramped it up, and did a lot of experimenting and seeing if I could get nukes through the winter, 4 frames, 3 frames, 5 frames, 15 frames, that kind of thing. So I just did a whole bunch of experimenting. So The 36 was more of an anomaly,
Right.
and just trying different things and then watching them all crater as the spring went on, because whether it was equipment failures, poor ventilation and nukes, that sort of thing, just learning a whole lot about how they responded during the winter was my biggest learning event. I often say I learn a lot more through my failures than I do my successes.
Exactly.
And beekeeping is no different.
Right.
So I stepped back from that, from the 36 number, toned it down a little bit more to figure out how I could manage. How does beekeeping fit in with everything else that we all have going on in our lives, whether it's kids? I don't have any, but
You have dogs, you have cows, you have all kinds of other stuff though.
There's a few other pieces of livestock kicking around.
Yeah.
So it was what became manageable. And in the upper teens or 20, whatever that number was, it was a little too much to be able to effectively do it. And then I decided this year to back it down to a dozen, and that sort of seems to be a happy medium. They're spread over 2 locations. I live up in Alstead, so there's some here, and then there's some over in Dorset, Vermont, and it's 2 completely different climate zones. I mean, one might as well be north of the equator and the other south of the equator. They get treated the same, but the response of how the bees work and do and grow is different between the 2 locations. Not measurably, but just different.
Yeah.
So it's a matter of watching that. It also gives me genetics get spread apart. I'm no longer one of these people that's, wants to have just a Russian or just an Italian. It's a mutt, who the hell cares? And it works out really, really well.
Yeah.
So when I'm asked what breed it is, it's a bee. I mean, I don't have to tell you, but
you can tell what you started with, but you don't know what else they went out and got fertilized by.
Right.
Because there may be beekeepers in your area as well. It's not just about you.
And every single time I purchase a bee, I shouldn't say it, 80% of the time I purchase a queen, I need it to get superseded, or it needs to go away. It needs to be a local, whatever's in the area, make it kind of thing. And that's the success that I've had in terms of trying to keep all the hives going, is the queens have to be local. So I'm delighted to go out and get something from, whether it's, a Michael Palmer or a Kurt Webster, or even just a generic whatever from Better Bee kind of thing. It always ends up being local, seems to work out the best.
Mm-hmm.
And when you've got more than one hive, the luxury of creating queens is relatively easy.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't need to go out and spend $40, $50 on a queen anymore, because if you need one, you just, in 3 weeks later, you can have one. So it's just a matter of doing that. But
yeah. And
that's
being
where I found the manageable point.
Yeah, exactly. And being sustainable on your own, like, imagine that, honey. Yes, we go out, we bring bees back for people because people have lost their bees. But that's not what we want to do. We want to be sustainable, and we want to be able to make our own bees and have our own queens and have a backup. So we're not buying bees from other places all the time. And our goal is to be able to have enough bees that, yes, we can share them with our neighbors, or if somebody needs something, they need a queen or they need a frame of brood or whatever from a healthy hive, that we have it for people in our local area. So our goal is not to have to keep bringing bees into the area. If we can sustain and we can share and we can help each other, I think that's the way we want to go. Like, I'm starting to raise a lot more queens now. It's not an easy thing if you're doing a ton of queens, but each of you guys can have a nuke box and have a backup queen all the time. And that's one of the things that I saw with Greg when he did his 36. I thought it was awesome because I love experiments. But that's a lot to take care of. It really is.
Yeah. It really, really is. I don't know how people do it, quite honestly, and still have a life. I don't know how sideliners can have 50 something bees.
I know it has to almost become part of your daily routine.
It's my full-time job.
Yeah.
I don't have another job. That's it.
Right. Well, Jan is, to me, the beekeeper up in the Littleton area. So she sells equipment, she teaches classes, she helps people with their bees. And so she has, that is her job. For me, I have another job, a 40-hour a week job. Then I'm the beekeeper, and I have, don't tell anybody, but I usually have about 50 hives in like 7 or 8 locations. That means I have to travel from one yard to another yard to another yard, and those are all 20 minutes away from each other so that they're not really mixing a whole lot. So, you know, like you have to decide what is it that you can actually do and do well.
Yeah, how much can you handle?
Right. And
We
so,
cut down. One time I was like Jody, I had like 8 yards going.
yeah,
I had to cut back.
right. I
had
have to
cut back. We're
evaluate.
down to 4 yards, and that is enough.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
for you guys that are backyard beekeepers, 1 yard is enough.
Yeah.
1 yard and 2 hives is enough. You know, like it all depends on how much experience you have. I'm not saying that I'm the expert and I know everything. I'm just saying this is what I want to do. I want to grow bees, and I want us to have bees locally so that we can have local bees. You know, like I want good genetics. I think that's the main thing for me is I want genetics. And so I'll talk with Jan about getting what we call ankle biters, or getting, you know, some kind of a breed of bee that I would like to introduce into my yards so that I can try to build on that. But what I try to do now is I try to have like a couple of different kinds of bees that I want in specific yards. So I can experiment and see, do those bees really do better in our local area or not? Who knows?
Now, does your area have a yard that you know there's a drone congregation area?
I do not know of any in particular. What I have based my bee yards on, and my my yards for mating, are on the genetics of other beekeepers that I know are in the area. So like I have a yard that's one place where it's close to a Carniolan breed grower. This
Mhm.
person only wants Carniolan bees. And so I have a yard that's no more than a mile or so away from them. And so we're able to
So
get
you
the
know you're
cross
going to
there.
get Carniolan drones.
Exactly. I'm not saying it's for sure, but
Right.
the chances are pretty high. So what I try to do is my mating yards, like my other mating yard, I have 2 mating yards. One other mating yard is where I have more Russians and Carniolans.
Mhm.
And so I know that that area is where I'm going to get mostly those kinds of bees, but I do not have a specific drone congregation yard. So if I was getting bigger in growing queens, that's what I would want to have, because I know you're going to be like, Jody, you didn't tell me that when I first started, but drones are important.
They
all
are,
of you
they
men out
are
there.
they are what your queens are going to be.
Exactly.
What
So
they're
you
gonna
can
have.
have the genetics of your queen, but whatever she goes out and gets fertilized by is what your bees are going to be. So if you don't have good genetics with your drones, then your genetics are all going to be reduced as well. So do you guys have any questions right now about December? There's not a lot that we can be doing. It is warm. Evelyn, you have a question?
Not so much a question, just an observation.
Mm-hmm.
I keep up on checking and treating throughout the year. Last I treated last year was in December. They got an OA treatment.
Mm-hmm. How'd your bees do? Oops, we can't hear you, Evelyn.
And I was amazed the mites were in the Slovenian hives. So they were treated. I did Apivar all through all of them. And I run quite a few hives. I understand the progression. I'm down to 30 right now, but I also do queens. So, but anyway, I just checked. I treated Thanksgiving, and a quarter of my hives had a huge mite drop.
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to get it again. They would be today, but they're flying today. It's 50.
What do you define as huge?
Bottom board was peppered. Now it was only a quarter of them, but I mean, it was way over threshold.
Yeah, so it's more than 2 or 3. So
Oh,
Peter,
yeah.
Evelyn is in Ohio too. So you guys, if you think that you're going to
right,
have
that's
50
right.
degrees today, don't even think about it.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
But no, it's you can't generalize because each year and each hive is different.
Right.
I'm down. I brought everything from my other yards home in March. So I have hives all around me, and I have to leave because I have a customer. So
Okay. Well, we're gonna go anyway. But today on our talk, this has been about 2020, what we've been through. We didn't really have a chance to talk about December, but honestly, December, there's not much that you can do except for make sure that you've gotten everything done with your hives. Make sure you have your wind block. You can medicate if it's warm enough with oxalic acid. But now it's just time to pray and start thinking about the future. So in our next program, we're going to talk about building, planning for the future, setting goals, and I'm looking forward to 2021. I don't know about you guys. Are you guys looking forward to 2021 and getting over this 2020? I am for sure. Okay, so we will see you soon. Keep beekeeping, and thank you guys for joining us on this Bee Chat today.
Thanks, Jody.
Take care. The way that this goes is this goes over your head, and then there's a little part here that attaches to the back of your neck. So everything's going to be nice and tight so that you're going to be breathing and just using these as your air flows. And Nancy, come into the picture, Nancy. This is okay during COVID because she's got her protective device on. And so she's got some nitrite gloves. And so she's going to be using those as well. And we'll have our veils on because the bees will fly a little bit. It's about, what do you think, 40 degrees today? 45. So it's about 45 degrees. It's going to be a little bit hard to hear us, so we're going to have to talk up a little bit. But we're going to put on our protective devices and get to town. I'm going to do
so you're only doing half. Nope, I would only do half. Not even. That's only one deep, right? Yeah. So that much? Yeah. And then, can you get your rags? Yeah, hold on. Let me keep this uncovered so we can absorb moisture from the air. Okay. It's kind of humid. Right? There you go.
All right, are you ready?
Yeah, I'm just going to set this for 3 minutes on this.
Okay.
Because it's small. Okay, rock and roll.
All right.
So while we're doing this, what we can do is we can go from one hive to another. So we have 2 wands. It just makes it so much easier to get one going, time it out for about 3 minutes, and that's what her and my wands are calibrated for. And then go on to the next hive. So we can do it in a continuous motion. It goes through really fast. And what we're trying to do is put these vapors into the air to kill the varroa mites that are inside the hives. The varroa mites can continue to grow throughout the year. Even if they're not multiplying, they're still there. So what we want to do is try to knock them down as much as we can before the winter really gets started. Right, Nick? Right. So we have 35 seconds on the first one that we started. We've prepared the next one with the wand and about a teaspoon of the wood bleach. We've closed it all up with some rags, and we'll get started to do that one. As soon as this one's done, we'll go to the next one, do the timing again. This one will cool. By the time this one has cooled, we'll go on to the next hive. Okay, so we can clip it. All you do is unclip it. Yep. And this will go with the next one. That will go to each one here. Okay, so that one is just going to be left so that all of the vapors can subside, and then we'll take those rags off in 10 minutes or so, 5 or 10 minutes. This one's got quite a few bees on it. Oh, and it's closed down. And fell down. Whoops, okay. As long as it's cool. So I do have my respirator on, and what you can see is that the inside of the wand has been cooked. All of the wood bleach has been vaporized. So you must have a bird bath in your area.
27 seconds. Okay.
I do like having that bar, you know. Did you have that on yours and you just don't use it? Or?
No, I don't have it.
No.
Not an option. It's like heated seats.
Right. So the bees are starting to get excited here.
Off you go.
Okay, is this one ready? This one's ready?
Yep.
Okay. All right, so can I take these out of here now, or do you think I should wait? Okay. You can see the vapors coming
You
out.
can see the vapors coming out through the cracks and the creases because, of course, the hive isn't completely airtight. So this shows us that probably all of the oxalic acid has sublimated and we're good to go.
So these two hives are sort of cooling now. The vapors are relaxing, and we will be closing these back up. So again, we're going to put our mouse guards back on, make sure that they have enough food, make sure that they have their homosoap boards, they're already wrapped, and they should be good for at least another month or two. Yeah, there's a lot more bees in that hive. As we're getting into these other hives, there's a lot more bees in these hives, and it's getting a little bit later. So some of the bees may be a little bit more cranky. I would definitely wear your bee gear, just in case, because you can never assume that bees do not want to sting you. They are going to be protective of their hive. So we've got things going. We're moving along. One is done. We're going to put the mouse guard back on and make sure that it has enough food. It's already been wrapped. It's got a homosoap board on it, and it should be good to go for another month or so. Again, this is around Thanksgiving weekend, so it's the very beginning of December, end of November, and this should be it until maybe January or February if we feel like we need to medicate again. Make sure you have food, and hopefully your bees will be great. You'll see them in the spring, and everybody will be healthy and alive. Yahoo!